FLM, wide open thinking, world-class work, and far-reaching results. Now with locations in Minneapolis, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Washington, D.C. A strategic marketing and communications company dedicated to serving clients who specialize in the business of agriculture and the life of rural communities.
Well, thanks for joining us here at the Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm here talking with Agri-Pulse Senior Editor Phil Brasher, and Phil is one of our guy at Agri-Pulse that spends the most time on Capitol Hill, and really just has really is in tune with what's going on up in these parts. And Phil, the big story, agriculturally speaking, and really just in general on Capitol Hill this week was progress on Trade Promotion Authority. And yesterday we saw some action. We saw a bill as well as a hearing on the bill from the Senate Finance Committee.
Yeah, big news. This has been weeks, actually months in negotiation between the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee and the House Ways and Means Committee. They're both Republicans, and the senior Democrat, the top Democrat on the Senate Finance Committee, Ron Wyden. Now, Wyden was insisting on a number of changes to this process. We often call it the fast track process for bringing trade agreements to the floor and getting them approved by Congress.
So when they were drafting this bill, I mean, we kept hearing for a while that it was close, that they were close to an agreement, that it was just going to be just around the corner. So what was, I don't know if straw that broke the camel's back is the right expression, but what was it that really got this bill up and over the top to where both sides could agree on it?
You know, it wasn't so much the TPA bill, because I think for a little while they had agreed on some, one was sort of a circuit, what's been called a circuit breaker process that Ron Wyden wanted and some Democrats. It's a way of short-circuiting this fast track process for a trade agreement if there is strong opposition, majority opposition actually, in these two committees, the Finance and Ways and Means in the House, to a trade agreement. Really what the key to finally getting this done was a whole separate issue of what's called trade adjustment assistance, and that's a whole series of programs that benefit workers and businesses and farmers who are harmed by imports. This is a very important issue to Democrats. Ron Wyden, the top Democrat on Senate Finance, wanted to make sure that there was this package of programs was going to move in tandem with TPA, and so he was insisting on negotiating both the terms of that trade adjustment assistance and the process for how it would be handled by Congress.
And looking forward, now that we have a bill, I mean, can we expect some action on it? I believe they're planning on marking the bill up next Thursday.
Yes, it looks like it'll come out of the Senate committee next week, along both bills, both the Trade Promotion Authority and the Trade Adjustment Assistance. They're going to move in tandem. The process will start in the Senate because it's thought that there's stronger support, more Democratic support. It'll be easier to pass the Trade Promotion Authority, the fast track bill, in the Senate. So it will move through the Senate, and then the House, where the vote is expected to be closer, will be next. That will be the real critical vote to watch.
And now shifting gears a little bit here to everyone's favorite issue, waters of the United States. It's certainly one that's rarely talked about on Capitol Hill. Folks rarely even discuss it. Speaking, of course, in sarcastic terms here, it's been a very hot button issue for the last couple of months, and really going back into the last Congress when it was first proposed by the Environmental Protection Agency, and saw some action on that as well this week.
Right. The administration, the EPA, and the Army Corps of Engineers are very close to finalizing this rule. Republicans on the Hill are basically taking a two-prong approach to trying to stop it. And they really launched that this past week on Wednesday, both through the appropriations process and then through a standalone bill. This standalone bill, which was approved by the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, would basically force the administration to withdraw the rule and then replace it with one with a new one after they consult with state and local officials and other stakeholders. Probably what's particularly important to watch, though, is what's going to happen in the appropriations process. These are Congress each year has to move spending bills to fund the government, and these are bills that in some fashion must become law. What's in these bills must become law. And so it's more difficult for the president to veto. He can veto a standalone bill, and if Democrats hold together, they can, in both chambers, can prevent it become law. So that means the Republicans' best chance to stop the rule from being enforced, from being implemented, is probably going to be through the appropriations process.
And speaking of commonly heard issues, we also saw some action this week from the House on the estate tax. Finally got a repeal vote from the House on that. I mean, and the estate tax, or the death tax as some people like to call it, is not necessarily a new issue. I mean, it's something that gets talked about, it seems like every year, every session of Congress. But this is really the first time, at least in my memory, my very short memory being what it is, that they've really got some progress on it.
Well, it's progress, but in many ways it was a symbolic vote. The estate tax has been controversial for going back at least a couple of decades, back when there was a much lower exemption and a higher tax rate. But they're still strong. It's still a big issue for farm groups in agriculture, and also for many small business owners. So the House did vote on Thursday to repeal the tax, and there were about 7 Democrats who voted for it and 3 Republicans who voted against it. So it's pretty very much a party line vote. It's probably about as far as it's going to get this year. We know there's only one Democrat in the Senate who voted last month in a non-binding vote for killing the estate tax. So there's virtually no Democratic support in the Senate for it. So even if it were to get through the Senate, it would be vetoed, and Republicans would be unable to overcome the veto.
Sounds good. Well, that's going to do it for this week's Washington Week in Review. For more on this and many other stories, feel free to click on over to agripulse.com. For Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Thanks for joining us.